JP Warren, and I am excited. Well, this is the podcast. Pretty much, we talk about leadership, what it's like building your leadership skills, and also what's the kind of the behind the scenes look at actually kind of the isolating road of being a leader, and also provide some skill sets to others out there facing this journey as well. I'm excited because this conversation has been waiting for months to take place, and we're finally actually going to get recording. Well, I want to introduce Cole Patchell, the president of Corrosion Resistant Alloys. You've seen CRA across, maybe it's LinkedIn or wherever you're at, but we decided to actually not dive into the energy space, oil and gas industry and all that stuff. We wanted to talk about more personal growth and leadership. And I'm going to bring him to the stage right now. Cole, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, JP, thanks for having me here. I'm excited about it. I know it's been a long time coming, but here we are. So thanks for having me.
We've actually had to reschedule, mainly on my part. We have, our side of the family we faced, I think when we first had this, that's when my father-in-law was in the hospital. And the second time he was in hospice. And it was just one of those things where it's like, it was very, obviously unfortunate timing, all that stuff. And it was kind of a tough time in our house, to navigate that. It still kind of is as we're navigating the loss of that. But, this is, whether I'm segueing it or not, this is kind of what kind of kicked this off. Like, how do you like adapting? Whether it's like divine timing or whether it's, the perfect time, perfect place. Like, what have you kind of like, talk to me, let's do a little background on yourself, Cole. It seems like, you got to see the world. You've been over 50 countries. You started rolling pipe when you were, 15 years old in the Texas heat. Like, trust me, I saw your LinkedIn, and you seem to have a very interesting past. And it's not just like, you got handed this, obviously, we talked about your company, it's your father's company. You started it, and you're coming in to actually kind of take the reins and lead the company. A lot of people think the misconceptions that's more easier said than done. And you find there's a lot of challenges in that. So kind of give me your background real quick, kind of a high 30,000 foot view on kind of your journey and kind of where you're at today. And let's kind of talk about kind of, the good, the bad, and the ugly and all that fun stuff.
Really a good question to start that off. I do feel like my life has kind of gone full circle. So, grew up in Houston. I went to high school in Houston. I chased the basketball dream for a little bit.
Okay.
Went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Never actually played basketball. Had six knee surgeries through the course of the adventure. And I took my first job in Baku, Azerbaijan. Went from Baku to Dubai. I was working with a company called J. Ray McDermott at the time.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you a couple of times during this journey.
Yeah,
what did you know going from Miami, Ohio, and saying, have you ever even heard of this country before? Did you know anything about this? Talk to me about kind of like the transition from college Cole to professional Cole.
So that's actually a great question, and not one that you and I have talked about in advance. So
for the record, we haven't really talked much.
We haven't talked much at all.
About,
so this is kind of fun because this is all surprises. So at Miami, I had a teacher, or I coached a 6-year-old basketball team and there was a professor in the business school named Rocky Newman. I coached Rocky's son on the basketball team. Okay. And so one day he came to basketball and said, "Hey, I've got a guy that I know that works with a company in the middle or Azerbaijan." And he said he's looking for a couple of college graduates to train up under kind of like a supply chain leadership development program. And I couldn't even say the name Azerbaijan at the time. I've actually learned it's called Azerbaijan.
There you go. What were you studying?
I was studying business economics and entrepreneurship. So I actually didn't even have Rocky as a teacher. I would see him around the university, and I would see his son at basketball, and he was a big supporter of his son. And so, so he came to me and said, "Hey, I think it's just going to be an incredible opportunity. Are you willing to take a phone call?" And I said, "Sure." So I was in a fraternity at the time. We were in the season of having a few extracurricular events, and I came home
like study groups and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. And I got home one night, and my phone rang at like 3:34 a.m. and from an unknown caller. And so I looked at it and thought, who the heck could this be? So I answered it, and it ended up being his contact that was calling from Baku. I guess he got his time zones mixed up and didn't realize he was calling me in the middle of the night. And we proceeded to do a phone interview on the spot. Been out all night, did a phone interview on the spot. And it was he said, "So in it," he goes, "Do you have a passport?" I said, "Yes, it's in Houston, but I could get it." shipped here quite quickly. I said, how quickly do I need it? And he goes, ideally this weekend. And so it was 4 or 5 days out. He set up a first class airfare, flew me to Baku, and it was my first. I got off the airplane in Baku. I had no idea I didn't know what I was interviewing for. I didn't even know what to expect from the country. But they met me arms open, incredible hospitality, had an interview and ultimately accepted the position. So I shipped off right after, just a couple weeks after my last day of my senior year of college, flew to Baku, and there I was to work. So I got thrown in the fire early. And unfortunately, the team, we lost the next round of the project that we were expecting to get. So I ended up getting transferred to Dubai, worked with the same company.
Yeah.
But a pretty wild out of college, out of university experience. I felt like I got an MBA pretty quick in international travel. And, it's definitely not, I don't think I used anything that I learned in a textbook, at Miami in that first job, but, just kind of how to survive in a place that you're unfamiliar with. I went from a small business school to a company that had, tens of thousands of people and very big, very big adjustment quite quickly.
So I grew up in Connecticut, and one of my friend's sister went to Miami of Ohio. So I understand the size. So I understand the size of the school, right? So when you go from that school in Ohio as soon to be, not even a college grad, but like right after, I guess new college grad. And, most people, when they get their, entry level positions anywhere else, any industry and all that stuff, it's probably, doing all these like tasks like, hey, file this, do this is how you learn all this stuff. You're being actually transported to a completely different culture halfway around the world as a soon to be grad. Like, what was that kind of like? Was that kind of like, hey, this is kind of like a surreal vacation, or, oh my God, this is the real world? Or what did that feel like for you? I guess that transition from like that size school to like that size of a company and a completely different culture.
Yeah. So from a work experience, I had a lot of probably the file this, sort this, run this paper here early on. But from a life perspective, they're just surviving in a place where hardly any English was spoken. I elected not to live on the company housing, but lived in the city. So shopping, cooking, getting food. It was a challenge. I also did some regional travel with the company. And that was a little bit more, customer facing and kind of exploratory new business opportunities. I would say that from a professional side, I really got thrown into it when I moved to Dubai. I showed up on a project in Dubai where the project manager was starving for people to help. I kind of walked in thinking I was going to be doing a bit more entry level work. And, the first week he had me working on a real estate transaction. And so, I got thrown into it.
How'd you feel walking into that?
I was excited. I was ready for it. You're young 20s, you're ready to conquer the world. You probably don't know the limitations that you have knowledge wise. Yeah. I think, you do come out of university thinking you're ready to just conquer the work world. And I think,
or you come out, you're like, oh, I should be at this level as a graduate. It's like, no, you're going to get there in 5 years. Yeah.
It's definitely a humbling experience. And I think probably the whole first 10 years of your career are and possibly longer. But I do think your path is really heavily impacted based on who leads you in that time. So, I had a leader in Baku or in Dubai that was really into early on. It almost felt like it was a bit of a micromanagement. But he was real particular how he wanted to do things. But looking back, it was more around a philosophy. It was kind of more of a, like you've probably heard the term of the art of the deal or other things like that. He had a very specific way to go about things. And really after kind of a quick crash course on learning that philosophy, he fully let me free. And so, it was kind of one of those things like invested heavy to let one go out. And, I even to this day, I remember some of those teachings and try to apply those to people who are new coming into our organization. Early people's success is, one, them, willing to learn, but, it takes people that you kind of pick up little bits of wisdom from along the way.
So, you mentioned Rocky, who wasn't even in your department, right? He was just a mentor on school. Yes, you were connected by, teaching his kid. And you mentioned this other person, all that stuff. So when it comes to kind of like mentors, like in your path, you know, in your journey and all that stuff, like how much did you pick up from good mentors? And when it came to like poor mentorship and all that stuff, what were your takeaways there?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Hey, listen, I do a podcast. We ask a lot of good questions on the
Yeah,
podcast.
you are. These are really good, and it's kind of in the spirit of things that I like. That you know, I uh, that journey of kind of self growth is often kind of also linked to mentorship. My father uses the term "fools learn from their own mistakes, wise learn from the mistakes of others."
I dig
If
that.
you really adopt that, he used to say it before I was probably ready to hear it. But if you kind of adopt that philosophy, is that if you've got people around you that have either achieved things or failed at various things, and you're willing to listen and be open to receiving, doesn't mean you necessarily need to implement it the same way they did or not. But if you learn from it, your hope is that you're in a net better place than that you were before. And there's things that I've seen firsthand that I definitely don't want to be as a leader. And I've seen things firsthand where I wish I could be a bit more of that.
What sticks with you more?
Probably the negatives, honestly.
Yeah.
I did a podcast with Birgit Kamps, who has CEO Blind Spots, and she kind of introduced me to the world that your team may not always view you the same way you view yourself, and that journey of kind of figuring out maybe those gaps is one of the most important things a leader can do. So, unfortunately, when you do that gap discovery, you learn some things about yourself that, hey, I thought maybe I was exhibiting behavior A, but maybe it was actually received as behavior B. And so she has a term, English is not always English. So, maybe what you think you said is not what somebody heard in that. And so, so hearing some of those, negative journeys from others and finding out, some of those gaps in yourself, I think are probably the things that stick with you the most. Obviously the positives, I think people always remember. I think people are a bit more skeptical or nervous to kind of go into the negatives. But I think that's where you get the true nuggets of information.
Why do you think people are so like, we're talking about self-reflection. I mean, you do that gap test and all that stuff. You find that, the blind spots in your journey or in your leadership, skill sets and all that stuff. For me personally, when I first started my leadership journey or leadership like dive in, I would get real defensive. Like, no, I'm not like that. I'm better than that. Like, I don't view myself that way. I'm really good at receiving criticism when I know I'm not. Like, so when it comes to that self-reflection part, I mean, how are you kind of like constantly adapting or kind of receiving that kind of like personal feedback or the self-reflective feedback you're doing and actually like identifying like, okay, well, I do need to work on this versus being defensive, being like, well, it's their problem, not mine.
Yeah, it's I do think it's a little bit, I'm a believer in Jesus. I'm a Christian. I do think there's some, faith-based things that implement, that impact how I receive and process those type of things. I also, personally, sometimes I have to step away and not respond quickly to what I hear, and then, as I kind of step away, and if you can truly get yourself in a place where you can reflect on it, it's like, oh man, guy, I really hated what they said, but there kind of is some truth in that. Usually in the moment, there's enough, probably there can be frustration enough where you don't receive it or don't see it or don't hear it. And so it's tricky though. I mean, I don't think anybody really likes when your imperfections are surfaced.
But you know what I've noticed though? I've noticed that whenever, whether it's, leaders of teams or even just individuals, whenever they start showcasing their imperfections or they start being more vulnerable with their team or their superiors, something like that, it seems to me like that creates more of a, I don't want to use this word, not in how it's butchered lately, but it kind of creates a safe space for teams. It creates that common bond where it's like people can relate to the leader more and they actually get more buy-in. What's been your experience kind of like showcasing your blind spots with your team and kind of those vulnerabilities?
Yeah, it's definitely it's contagious. Like, I mean, good behavior and bad behavior is contagious in an organization.
Okay.
I actually think our Senior Vice President Tommy Najjar.
Love Tommy.
Tommy came from he was Chevron and then Hillcorp, head of operations for Hillcorp, but he kind of brought an attitude of vulnerability to our leadership team. And so I give him credit for helping, not just bringing that but living that. And so my father John wasn't like that early in his career, but has had some changes as time has gone on, and expresses a lot of humility, a lot of vulnerability. So now you've got Tommy doing it, John doing it. It's rubbed off on me, and I hope that I can continue to grow and improve in that area. And I've seen it. I've seen other people through the organization, kind of adopt that. So, again, back to like, you got to live it. And if you start living it, you'll develop a culture of that. And it starts with leadership. You don't build these type of things from the bottom up. You build them from the top down. But but it's not a top down initiative. It's kind of, have you ever seen that schematic that's like, you change your heart, it changes the hearts of those around you, and if those around you change, it like has that multiplier
ripple effect.
Ripple effect. And by your change, like 100 years from now, there may be 500 people or whatever it is that are impacted by some change that you personally made. So I think that's true in our organization. We don't have 500 people. We have about 60 people. But my hope is that positive, that change that comes on the leadership level also kind of flows through the rest of the organization, and then the rest has their own journey with that.
So how was your journey kind of, first off, I love the idea of ripple effect, because I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I put out, like content that I put out that like, that's important to me. You know what I mean? It's stuff that I'm dealing with, whether it's like imposter syndrome, whether it's communication, all that stuff. And I'm thinking, man, it's not hitting anyone. Like no one really cares about that. But it's interesting that sometimes I'll get a message like, man, hey, you're talking about imposter syndrome. That's something I faced with. I couldn't, identify it. So like, it's interesting to like, even if you don't think you're intentionally impacting people, like people have more power to affect others than they believe.
Oh yeah. And what you say and do is, it's not going to impact everybody, and each topic's, is going to resonate with different people in different ways. I've noticed I've not done as many podcasts or anything like you have, but I've put a few vulnerable, I wrote something during COVID, kind of essentially like silver linings during the COVID era. And I wrote that because it was just like a little, I don't even know what it was, just like a little opinion piece. But somebody asked me,
you felt inspired to say something.
Somebody asked me like a really tough question. They were like, hey, everybody talks about all the bad things associated with COVID. What are some of the beauty, like the beautiful things that have come out of it? And I was like, wow, I've been so focused on the negative.
Yeah.
Like, let me step back and think about it. And so when I put that piece on LinkedIn, I had people reaching out to me in like some of the most deepest, realest ways, like other leaders. I had a CEO of a huge company write me like one of the nicest messages. Like we didn't have each other's emails or anything like that, but we have each other's information now. But I thought, wow, like, and I got people that I know really well that didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So, my goal wasn't to say anything. It was probably more therapeutic than anything, but it's just amazing, kind of when you engage in these type of conversations, it's going to hit people in different ways. And if it just impacts one person positively, it's worth the effort.
Did you find that during COVID, you found yourself kind of at a space, I'm not going to say to reinvent yourself, but to kind of maybe think a little more strategically about how you're kind of like going and leading people? What was that kind of like decisions that you had internally, if you did change?
Yeah, I think probably coming out of COVID is where most of my change had come from, not necessarily during it. I do think the reset that happened with COVID was I was on a trajectory of not spending a lot of time with my family, working a lot of hours, a lot of work travel. And in that work travel, sometimes I would stay 10 days when I really needed to make it a 4-day trip. But, and I did.
You justify it. You're like, well, I could do a meeting.
I'm already over there. Might as well.
Yeah.
And now I find myself like hurrying up and flying back to catch my son's baseball game. Maybe they have something at school. I've got 2 boys, young boys, but, I think the main thing was just like, I want to be present in their life. And COVID was an awesome opportunity to be around family. especially if they were local. And I was kind of on that trajectory of not spending a lot of time with it. So I think that was kind of one of the foundational resets. And then I know we talked about mentorship. Coming out of COVID, I had a leader of another organization come to me, and he had gone through this. He'd gone through a kind of leadership and faith-based development program,
Okay.
the one-on-one program. And he ended up spending almost 2.5 years meeting with me every Tuesday morning for an hour and a half. And so free, he picked me out. I mean, it was like, he selected me, and he says, "Hey, I want to invest in you as a leader and as a person." And so part of this program is that, essentially you're also, if you can finish it, you're supposed to then now pick the next person for you to kind of invest in. It's kind of like a pay it forward kind of thing. There's no obligation to it, but, to this day, I mean, I'm totally, it's just wows me that somebody who had all these demands on his time went out of his way to impact the life of somebody else. And I think that's really what that journey really accelerated. Coming out of COVID, it was right after COVID, really accelerated that kind of leadership development and life change.
So I feel like your leadership style or journey or idea about leadership. And again, at the end of the day, leadership is really kind of setting culture for your company, right? Setting culture for your team, setting expectations, being clear on this, and kind of like obviously influencing, leading in a common direction. And, I remember when I started in the industry, I think around the same time as you did, leadership was very different. It was do as I say, we pay you from the neck down, get there. You're pretty much a soldier at a company, right? You're always deployed. You're always doing something. And it does seem like in the past couple of years, there has been a shift to more of the servant leader, more of the empathetic leader, more of, hey, rather than me, Cole, you were late. Rather than me kind of, chew your ass a little bit and all that stuff, let's actually have a conversation about this and kind of align on some goals. So I feel like leadership has changed, whether it's the EQ side and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people changed, during that 2021 time period, right? Whether, you're stuck at the house, you kind of reevaluate what you're doing, if you're passionate about it, what you really enjoy and all this stuff. But when it comes to kind of like, let's say, you reset. So time at home is as equally as important as time in the office right now. Did you find like once you did start making that shift, was there any like negative impacts that it had to like the company culture, the team, or kind of like what you're trying to achieve at your company?
No, I actually think it's had a positive impact.
Talk to me about that. Dive into that a little bit.
Which is wild. Like, I mean, I think the era my dad grew up in, it was like you counted how many hours you were at the office, how many days a week that you worked. Did you work?
How many birthdays you missed?
Yeah. Like, oh man, I can't believe you took a PTO day, and they give people grief for that, crap for it. And, which is crazy. But I do think, that balance is important. I'm a pretty big believer in like body, mind, and soul. Like you got to take care of all three of them. When those get out of balance, you could still perform at a high degree, but it's probably not sustainable. Mine was out of balance. I also wasn't exercising really at that time. I've got all the time in the world with COVID, but I'm not exercising. Like, what am I doing? And so, kind of part of coming back was getting people, or kind of in that resetting the foundation was exercising. Got involved in some Bible studies, met with this individual, sought leadership coaching, and I think all three of them are. Those three areas are really important. And, but like from a business standpoint, I think when people are balanced, they're happier. I think when they have less time, they focus on the areas that they're best at, like, so if you're like, hey, I'm going to work a 40-hour week. Well, and you had 60 hours before, you're like, hey, in these 40 hours, I'm going to do the things that are the most impactful or the most important. And I think a big percentage of most people's calendar is wasted. It's
Okay.
They're spending it maybe in areas that is not their skill set. Maybe they're building in fluff and things like that. And so I think what it's that balance has essentially reduced the number of hours I'm working, and by reducing the number of hours working, it's made our company kind of go into like, what are the top 3 most corporate objectives? What is each team's top 3 objectives to needed to support that? And then what are my individual 3 objectives that would support team or corporate ones? And if you spend 80% of your time kind of working on those top 3, I think organizations will grow.
That's interesting. So pretty much if again, I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's possible that the less time you work, if you're actually focused on the things that move the needle, right? The things that actually are pushing the ship forward versus all the 95% of other stuff that we do throughout our day that kind of like consume the time. You can actually work less and actually improve the team and the culture and the business if you align and stay focused on these 3 main objectives or whatever the scorecard is in front of you.
I think, you can achieve your objectives and you could live a more joyful life because you have time, you have bandwidth to do things that, matter to you personally.
What is joyful for you? What does a joyful, balanced life look like for you?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of like the question of what's your definition of success.
Yeah, exactly.
Please don't ask me that next, because 2 of them will be tough. But I kind of look like, happiness is like a feeling at a moment in time, but a joyful is kind of a deeper, extended, moment of happiness. But it's extended, it's prolonged. I think it has a sense of freedom, of a feeling to it. I think a lot of it too is kind of surrendering of your will and being open with maybe what's pre-prescribed for you, or it's kind of getting out of yourself and then just kind of enjoying the ride, enjoying the gifts that are around you, the blessings.
Okay, I'm gonna dive into this a little bit. So lately I've had a personal struggle, right? And I'm not gonna say lately, this might have been something that's happened since I started this company. I've never really been entrepreneurial until I started all these companies like 5 years ago. And lately, even this week, right? Like Crew Club's going awesome, right? We're getting at capacity, we're getting great speakers, we're doing something bigger, better. In May, we're having our first 4 and all that stuff. I have such a difficult time, and I'm trying to, like, through prayer, through meditation, through trying to do gratitude, whatever. I have a very difficult time holding on to gratitude and just kind of appreciating because I have that destination anxiety, the carrot on the stick, like, oh, once I get this, then I'll be happy. Once I get this, then I'm going to be happy. And that for me, that is such kind of a mental gymnastics hurdle obstacle course that I constantly have to tell myself I'm grateful and all that stuff, yet the feeling is like it's very fleeting, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you actually kind of like, was it joy and happiness or gratitude and happiness? How do you actually kind of maintain that joy, or like what do you focus on, right? I mean, you have a family to raise, you have a baseball game, you have a company to build, to maintain, it's on the right track. There's all this stuff going on. How do you not lose focus on kind of like what's ahead and actually be present and enjoy where you're at right now?
It's
what advice do you have for me? How about that?
Yeah. So we do these things called, it's a Berkman. It's like a Myers-Briggs and all these different personality assessments. But I think the Berkman is one of the best. I've taken a lot of these. But in those tests, it kind of tells you a little bit about like what are the things that are needed to feed your soul the most, a little bit. I am like 99% outdoors, but I have an office job. So, essentially it doesn't mean that I need to work in the field to be happy, but I need to have some element of time in nature, just to like reset the mind. And that also tends to be the place where I think about those things that are like what's important to me. And so about 3 years, we're building in the process of building a manufacturing facility in Brenham. Behind it, we've got a few hundred acres. There's some hunting blinds, there's some ponds.
That is a beautiful part of Texas, by the way.
It is gorgeous. So what I've been doing for like the last year and a half is every Thursday morning I drive out, I work from that facility. Okay. But I leave Houston at 4:35 in the morning, and I try to catch the sunrise out there. A lot of
I
times,
love sunrises, buddy.
oh
My daughter gets on me, but I love sunrises.
there is something about being out there, turn the car off. I usually actually go walking. There's a couple spots that I like to sit. Deer will come by, birds will fly over, fish feeders on the pond go off. Sometimes the fish are feeding, but like I kind of use that as my time for prayer, meditation. I think about the things at work that are important. I think about the things in life that like I feel like I'm maybe not given the time, attention to. I also think about the things like where am I spending time that like doesn't really align with some of my my goals. And so I guess my takeaway in this is like find your happy place, find the place where your mind. I don't have my phone with me usually.
Yes.
I just leave it in my truck or whatnot. So I'm not sitting there texting things like that. But like, where can you go where you're not distracted? You can be in quietness and just think about the things that are important. For me, that's in nature. I know some people that's running, or doing some sort of other athletic type of thing, but it's just amazing. Like you give yourself that quiet time. It's amazing kind of what bubbles up as like, you have all these like personal aha moments, work aha moments.
I love that because I think, right now, obviously as a society, call it what you want, it's not like kids these days. Everyone is affected by this, but our phones are constantly, hitting us with dopamine every single day. They're either making us mad with something or they're showing us cat videos. So you're stuck to it, right? So you never really do have the opportunity, and lack of a better word, to be bored, right? To actually process what's going on, to come up with creative solutions. And I find like my phone's always on do not disturb. That pisses off a lot of people, but it is what it is. I don't want to be tied to my phone. But I always find that like whenever I do take walks outside, I'm never listening to podcasts. I'm never listening to music. I'm always just trying to like be there, just like, cause like I'll get out in the morning, my mind's like doing this, right?
Yep.
And I start walking, it kind of starts slowing down. Then it starts kind of like puts like, kind of like itemize my day, gets me excited about things. But I think the constant attachment to phones is really robbing a lot of people of being bored, of being prioritizing what's important to them, or being creative, or like innovative solutions, or what else could I do, or am I really even satisfied with my job right now or my life right now? So, man, I think putting the phone down to me is such a key part, in my opinion, of, I'm not gonna say happiness, but I'm gonna say it's one of those things that kind of like you don't have to be distracted 24/7 by constant dopamine.
I think it's a very wise comment. Make no joke. It's still a struggle with me. That's probably the first thing I look at often.
Yeah.
When I wake up, and it's one of the last things I look at before I go to sleep. What I've been doing probably gives me 2 to 3 hours where it's just like I'm fully alert, and I don't have it. But I think my life and my family's life would be a lot better if it were 10 hours or 5 hours, if there was a way to, put even some more rules around it. So I think it's only getting worse with that. Now kids are having access to stuff at a young age. We watched early on in my childhood, we watched TV like 1 hour per week. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
It was Saturday morning cartoon.
Hour we got. I don't even know why we put in a little Saved by the Bell mixed in after that. But now you've got kids watching it every morning, every evening,
and it's short form content. It's not like storylines and all that stuff. And to me, that affects a lot of things. Whether it's attention, whether it's communication skills, whether it's they have to be entertained all the time. There's no like going outside playing the dirt. like getting bored, like creating these imaginary worlds. It's very like boom, boom, boom. It's right there. It's very present.
Instant.
It is very instant. So in your journey and all that stuff, when you first got in your leadership role, what kind of leader did you want to be, or what kind of leader did you perceive yourself as, and what was kind of the reality of that?
So I think we have this like little thought process that like your organization needs you need a performance culture, and you kind of need you need performance and culture, like two variables that you're a balanced organization are paying attention to. I think you could have like the greatest culture in the world, and if your company is not performing very well, your run's you're gonna end. The journey's gonna end at some point.
It's nice to have, but if you're not really executing,
if you're not profitable as a business, the happy environment you've created is not going to last. You could also have an incredibly performance driven company and nobody be happy. I would say probably in my early part of my leadership journey, I was more performance driven. Like we got to win at all possible costs.
Okay.
And part of that kind of self discovery and the journey is realizing that winning was coming at the expense of people. Not
What do you mean?
really. Whether I was undermining a thought process or maybe not celebrating somebody enough in an area.
Okay.
Like my personality assessment says I don't actually need a whole lot of celebration. I've never really liked celebrating my birthday or other thing. But you look at other people here and it's like that's also it's critical for their success. So I think as time has gone on, that little barometer of performance versus culture, my goal is to make it somewhere close to in between, maybe a little bit more focused, slightly tilted towards performance. But neither of those can be really out of kilter. And so I think like I've had a softening as I've softened on the need to perform. I've found that we're actually still in focused on culture and people development. Our performance actually has been as good, if not better, which is wild. But we're just not measuring, some of those, like how many sales calls did you make? How many people answered? How many places did you visit last week?
So if you don't measure stuff like that, that's very easy for, I think that's a lot of people in leadership get that wrong. You know what I mean? It's the micromanagement of control, right? It's like, well, Cole, you're supposed to call 10 people a day. That results to 5 meetings. That results to 2 lunch and learns to 1 sale. Like they follow that, and I just don't think that actually brings out the best in a lot of people. No. I think that's kind of like it's micromanaging. It's not really empowering individuals. So where are you kind of finding, like, if you're not measuring things like that, what type of areas are you measuring to kind of like, because culture is one of those words that's like, it's, what it is, you feel it, but you can't really define it, right? It's like, how do people,
and you're really, you don't go into the office and say, hey, we're going to work on our culture today.
We're going to do this.
You kind of work on the things that you think will impact it. And it's kind of the same as performance. Our COO, Justin Boone, has this comment that he always says, don't tell me how to capture the hill. Tell me what hill I need to capture and let me know why. So he wants to understand why we're going after this hill. Like, what's the purpose? And often people think about what does that mean to me and what does it mean to my family or team. But if you understand they understand the what and the why, the rest of the organization and team and individuals, they can figure out the how, and your how may be a little different than my how. Like the way, maybe it is somebody needs to do those 10 calls per day, or maybe one person's just really, really good at, getting sponsored into some place, and they do 1 call, but it's like a very deep, meaningful one. So I think if we're, as a leader, it's kind of talking about the what and the why, is kind of empowers people to figure out how to do it. And then, culture, you got to mix some things into the business, like whether it's trainings, or some kind of organic event. We every year our commercial organization does a 3-day retreat. We go out of the city. We go in somewhere. Typically, last year we went into Brenham in the country. I would say like 25% of that is we do like team development kind of exercise, like fun, like games, but there's strategy into what we're putting in there. We do 25% of the time we spend on developing the strategy for the next year, and we actually do 50% of the time is like cooking. We cook dinner, we cook it, like a lot of people cook it ourselves, or we play a cornhole tournament. It's just like team bonding, no plan, just like you're
just get together and connect
together and have fun. And sometimes, and that's the bulk of the agenda, but just people being real with each other, I think just being with each other, developing personal relationships, things of like that adds depth to culture. You can't just go into a conference room at lunch and do a lunch and learn, and then like you have a better culture. And culture is developed over time. We also pay attention to things and people that we think would be culture enhancers, and we keep an eye on, like, is anybody promoting triangulation? Is there somebody who's, there's culture eroders too? Is there somebody that stabs their team in the back or lies or doesn't have humility or whatever it is? So, you got to also be careful to make sure, like, anytime you add a person to the organization, they're either going to help the culture or they're going to hurt it. And you got to make sure you do your initial due diligence to make sure it's not the second. And if you do have an issue with culture, erosion, you got to hit it head on. You can't let it's like a cancer. It's like, if you get it early, it tends to go away. But if you get it late, it could
might have spread.
It's spread through a whole organization.
And that's interesting too. That's the whole concept of, like, whenever I'm talking to, teams out there, people in leadership positions, like, yeah, this person's doing this. I'm going to see if they get better. I'm going to give them I'm going to give them another chance. It's like, you're doing more harm than good if you're not having those conversations. And I'm not saying these conversations have to be combative or deconstructive. Have a constructive conversation with someone if you actually kind of disagree with their kind of behavior or attitude, versus just hoping it gets better. Because you're right, that does spread. Now, it's interesting we're having this culture conversation right now, because last week we had a conversation. Shad Frazier led a crew club roundtable, and it was all about building culture. And one of the things that kind of he brought up was, like, the bottom pillar of culture is like the hierarchy of needs. It's safety, right? And so what you just kind of described is, like, don't tell me which hill to take, like, don't tell me how to take it. What that is, I'm kind of, interpreting this like, so you're allowing people to come in with their own innovative ways, or, hey, listen, we've done it this way. What if we try it this way? And that, for me, I think that's a very great way to instill that safety, where it's like, yeah, if you want to try it, you try something, and hopefully it's like, or like, let's be a soundboard. Let me bounce that idea off. But when is, like, so other leaders out there listening to this, like, man, maybe I do control too much. Maybe I do need to start delegating. Maybe I do start doing this. How do you actually kind of, like, have that trust in people to be like, hey, why we're here? What we have to do. The how is up to you. How do you actually kind of, like, advise people to actually start implementing that, like, trusting their teams a little bit more, release a little bit more control on the how portion?
Yeah, great question. So it all starts in the hiring process. Like, you have to find people who are, aligned with whatever your philosophical business strategy, your philosophically who you want people to be as a person, as a teammate. If you have somebody in your organization that you don't trust, how are you going to trust them to come up with a solution?
Is that like a gut feeling you get? Is it like because, like, I always think, like, people always talk about data. It's like, sometimes gut feelings are stronger than any data is out there.
Gut feel, time. I mean, so on average, we probably do 40 hours of pre-hire work with people. I mean, we wear people out, to be frank.
Okay.
And, like, that's a common feedback. But we have, like, a little board over here that shows how long people have been here. Like, our turnover is like hardly anything. So, if you can invest,
that pays off.
It pays off. If you already have, and it may mean that, like, if you already have a group that you don't trust, like, you got to hit those head on. But we try to fix this, like, in its most upstream form. Like, don't expand the problem. Make sure that, like, you kind of fix forward at least, and then you address whatever issues you may have internally. But 40 hours of work is I've seen people have, like, the most brilliant first 1 hour interviews, and you leave and you're like, this is the best person, like, we have to have this person. And then the second person does it, and it's the same thing, and you've gone 3, 4, 5 hours, and then all of a sudden you start asking around about them or whatever it makes sense, and some little red flag bubbles up.
Okay.
And usually, like, if you have a red flag in that early on journey, think about, like, if that's 10 times worse, will that be a problem within our organization? And usually, kind of in that 40-hour period, you're either finding that there is some sort of red flag that you can't live with, or a red flag that maybe just needs more exploring. Sometimes you explore it and it's, like, totally fine. Or the cool thing is, like, I've gotten to the end of some of these and you're like giving somebody a hug and you're like, I'm so excited to start this journey, and that's how that's what, those are the people you want to hire. You get there and you're just like, you're so meshed as before it even starts. And so, so then you do the pre-hire, and then we actually do 3 to 6 months of no performance in their job scope.
Okay. And what do they focus on the 3 to 6 months then?
Learning the kind of who we are, how we do things, meeting the team. We have them go meet all the team members, go have lunch, breakfast, meet them one-on-one in the office, like step out and have coffee. People get antsy in this period. They're like, oh, I'm ready to get to work. But at what point in your career going into a company, like if you're long into your company and you're so into something, you're not going to have time to go do all that later. So kind of getting that early on team building, I think is so crucial. But you also have to make the decision as a company that, hey, we're not going to get any net production benefit from that person for whatever that agreed upon period of time. But you're making a longer term investment there, and so, and then so that process then flows. We then do something called touch base meetings. So it's like monthly discussions. The whoever manages a person talks about like not just their scope, but like where do they want to be as a person in 3 years, 5 years? What blockers? Like where can we invest in them? Maybe outside of like whether it's training or classes or leadership, or what else do they want to be exposed to that they're not currently exposed? So like the journey starts upstream, and then like it can't stop.
It keeps going.
It's got to keep going.
So how different is this? I mean, obviously, as leadership grows, as companies change, presidents and leadership positions, all this stuff. I mean, I'm sure that, listen, we don't have to, knock the previous and all that stuff. But I mean, how much do you feel that the culture at CRA has changed just through, I guess, not you just stepping in the ranks, but you also kind of identifying, this is the stuff I want to focus on. This is the expectations, the 3 to 6 months, the balance, the 40-hour, interview process, stuff like that. How much have you seen the culture actually shift or change, or has it always been like that?
So the early years of CRA, especially when my father John was leading the company, he was win at all possible costs.
Okay.
I mean, he was and he did win. I mean, he did great, and there was a huge performance driven, and kind of through a series of missteps, him professionally and personally, really kind of started his leadership journey. So I think you asked early in the podcast, like about maybe things that didn't go well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of CRA's current foundation is built off a series of early on kind of negative consequences or wrong maneuvers, personally and professionally. And so, that goes back to that comment: fools learn from their own mistakes, wise learn from the mistakes of others. I'm blessed to be in a situation where I'm in a succession environment. I've learned a lot from him on things that he's done well, and I think our culture has learned most on, in particular, who do we want to be, not as a company in terms of products, but who do we want to be as people, to our team, to our suppliers, to our customers, to the community. Community is a big part of it. And so, a lot of this foundation was laid really based on his trial and error. And then you got guys like Tommy who've come in and said, okay, hey, he brought that new attitude in. So, I think it's one of these things that feels like it keeps getting better every year. I feel like each year I keep saying this is the best team I've ever had, and I mean it. So it is contagious. You can't take your eye off it. But for me, I'm just looking at what are some of the things that have happened before me, and how can I learn from what worked and what didn't, and then how can I also get guidance from people externally that have gone through the same journey, and what worked for them and what didn't work for them.
So where do you feel like you are in so you've been, running this company, you've been in leadership positions before and all that stuff. Obviously, management, your skill sets and your conversations and your directives and your goals and your expectations, they change as you kind of evolve, throughout your career and all that stuff. Where do you kind of see your leadership journey right now? Like kind of what's holding you back and what's kind of getting you pushed forward?
Ooh, this is a tough one here.
Yeah.
So our we each company has to have something they believe in, and kind
Okay.
of in ours, we have this thing called a roadmap, and a roadmap is who do we want to be as teammates, suppliers, customers, who do we want to be to the community. So our roadmap doesn't change. We've only changed it a couple times in the last 10 years, maybe once, I think, actually. But then we have these kind of 1 year, 3 year, 5 year kind of business vision type things. So our company is like, we've been preparing for growth for a long time. We've invested quite a bit in technology. We've significant investment in the expansion of manufacturing. We've been building a manufacturing facility since 2021, and we're hoping to go live in March. So we're like, I mean,
Right around the corner.
this is a long journey. We'll be almost 2 years behind original schedule, which is not super exciting, but
Rome wasn't built in a day, buddy.
it was not built in a day, and the pipe mill definitely wasn't built in 2 years. But we've been preparing our team for this kind of step. I tell some of our managers here, like, we do a baseball analogy. We were in like single A, and instead of going to double A or triple A, we're just jumping into the majors. And so, to do that, it takes a different level of preparation, focus. I would say focus over intensity.
Okay, I like that.
And kind of back to like, where are we going and why, and make sure we're focused on those top things. So, I think as a company, we have been preparing ourselves for growth. I love growth. Growth is fun to me. Change is fun to me. But it can't. The challenge will be how can we grow, but without the expense of the fabric of who we want to be. So I think if all plays out like we hope, and you're talking to me in 5 years. I think we're a totally different company. Hopefully we're a lot bigger in terms of capabilities and output and whatnot. But so as a journey, trying to prepare the team to be ready for that growth, kind of like if you use that baseball analogy, like, we're going to work out a little harder. We got to get prepared. You just got to have your stuff a little bit more, your house in order, if you're stepping up from the single A to Major League Baseball.
And there's bigger decisions to be made. There's
much bigger decisions. Things cost more.
So let's talk about, how do you navigate kind of like when it comes to, like, let's say a decision like investing in a mill, or when it comes to like a risky decision, all that stuff. How do you balance like innovation and risk with like kind of like the company's growth and alignment? Like, what if it fails? How do you like look at the failure, if there is failure and all that stuff? Like, how do you actually make these decisions on risk versus reward, on growth versus buckling the hatches and riding the storm out? Because a lot of people now, a lot of leaders, they're taking, my perspective, a lot of leaders are probably doing what everyone else is doing, which is, shutting the hatches, not investing in their people, really not investing in their culture. It's more do more with less, sharpen the pencil, things like that, right? Very reactive nature. So how are you actually navigating the decision processes during a flat market that we're in right now, or during a period of expansion where you're actually like looking at like, okay, innovative, creative, capital expenses, investment versus the risk? I mean, how do you actually navigate these decisions right now, especially in this finicky market?
Yeah. So I mean, you got to develop a business case first. Do you feel like the business case warrants the investment? I think one of the big question marks is like, what's the size of the prize?
Okay.
I think a lot of people will tend to look backwards and say, hey, what was the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years look like? But I mean, you're very familiar with the energy market. Looking backwards has really no guarantees on what the future looks like. So you can't really forecast your forward-looking things based on backwards activity, especially in a sector that's like so volatile.
And there's so much change coming now too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this is where, a leader's job, a visionary leader's job, is to kind of take all the data that you have, tap into a little bit about the gut feel that you talked about, and like, where is the business trending? Where do we feel like, things of that nature, and ultimately has to make a decision that they feel like is in the best interest of the company. It's not a perfect science. I mean, we do look at everything and think of like, if plan A doesn't work out, what does plan B, plan B, plan C look like?
Okay.
For us, like on the pipe mill, our primary focus is the oil and gas sector, but we've intentionally ramped up like Department of Defense work. We're looking at some aerospace work. We're looking at chemical processing industry work. There's even some other sectors. So, I look at that and say, hey, when oil and gas is down, some of these other sectors have historically said to be up. And then from a macro perspective, it's kind of like real estate. They always say like, you should be buying property when everybody is running away from property. I talked to a guy yesterday that's like actually looking to buy property in California now. He said all of the institutional investors have run away from California. And he's like, but California is still great. Like it's still an incredible state, the booming business. There's, I know Texas and California have their beef, but it's a great state, And so I think that the same's for business. Like we're in a heavy manufacturing metals environment. There probably couldn't be any investment less sexy when we started this in 2021. But here we are in 2026, and now we have tariffs. We've had our biggest competitor in the United States shut down. We've had other areas like, competing with Europe where their cost base is just skyrocketed. You kind of look at all this and think everybody was running for manufacturing. I'm pretty excited about being manufacturing in America now. I mean, I'm ready to get this thing open. So, I can't promise that this thing is gonna work out like we had hoped, but we saw money and investment running away from the space, and we still saw a need. And so, we looked at it and said, we feel like it's a pretty safe bet.
Man, I love that. So, couple last questions. We're coming up on an hour. I can't believe we've been talking about it for an hour. By the way, I could probably talk for another hour, but I don't think anyone's going to listen to the second hour. Let's do this 2 parts. But what are you seeing right now when it comes to a lot of leaders whether it's in your circles or just stuff you're seeing and hearing and talking about in your coffees and meeting with people and stuff? Where are you seeing kind of leaders right now not get it, or something maybe that's grinding your gears with some leadership skills out there, or some different leaders out there? Like what are you seeing right now that's kind of like that you're like, this is where they're getting it wrong? And obviously we're not going to name names or anything like that. I'm just on the general consensus.
I'll first preface this comment with that I actually think there's a lot of positive trends happening right now.
Okay, like what? Let's do that first.
I do. I think, with COVID, some of the ups and downs in the industry kind of resetting your priorities. I'm having more like deep dialogue with leaders than ever before. So like, I think there's a different level of vulnerability I'm seeing in leaders right now. Leaders that are a lot more balanced than they were 10 or 15, 20 years ago. I'm also seeing a lot of leaders, discuss their faith and work environments that like you just didn't hear before. Which echoes that I think there's a lot of depth to some of the growth that's happening. I do, and we actually got some of this. So where I'm going to go in terms of back to your question is that probably 5-6 years ago, I guess it was 2018 probably. So we kept hearing digital transformation. Every tech is taking over the whole energy sector. If you're not the leader in technology, you're going to be out of business in whatever number of years. And like every major oil and gas company wanted you to create some platform that they could integrate with and suck all your information away so they could make their decisions. And what I think is found out, and I think a lot of people have realized, is the tech play was probably a little overplayed in some areas, like majorly. And at the root of everything, relationships are still the most important thing. I don't care what industry you're in.
Amen.
Relationships will always prevail. And so, I do think AI is something that like will have some impact to the future. What that'll look like in the sector to be determined. But there's some things that AI can't do. AI can't sit down with the CEO of another company and shake its hand and do a deal on trust that changes.
Influence the room, communicate the object. I completely agree.
AI is not going to build culture. AI is not going to empower people for success. It may give them more data for decision making, and I think it'll have a great role in that. But so the tech thing's definitely overplayed, and like I said, I think relationships are at the starting point of every,
it's so, dude, I love how you're saying that, because that's obviously the platform on is like connecting people and all that. But like, it's so fascinating how it's like humans need connection, right? That's what kind of makes the world work and all that stuff. But we are again, going back to the phones, going back to all this stuff, we are such a hyper connected world, but we're so disconnected, right? Like, you can have all these followers, all these, friends or connections on LinkedIn and all that stuff. But how many people do you actually really pick up the phone and call and say, man, I'm facing this challenge today, or I'm doing this? That's the type of it's not the transactional relationships. It's the genuine connections where you're actually
it's the connections with depth.
Like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think that, and I think when it comes to like communication skills or like being like teams or culture and all that stuff, it's going to be the people that can connect and influence. Those are going to be the skill sets to me that are going to be good to great, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Completely.
And so, wrapping up here, I have a question. What advice would you give a young Cole? What advice would you give those other leaders starting off in their journey to kind of maybe speed up their leadership skill set, their journey, or their knowledge that you'd like to bestow on 2012 Cole?
Yeah, I would probably say seek the wisdom of others sooner. I thought forever I didn't need it.
How would people do that?
I think that what you'll find is that leaders are more approachable than you think. So I'll give you an example. I've gone back to Miami of Ohio to speak. I've given everybody my phone number and my email address. I've probably spoken in front of a couple hundred people. It's been a little bit of time, but I've only had like one person ever reach out, and I've said, please reach out.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something, if you want to get connected into a company, you want to talk about like your work career, these were like entrepreneurship major people. I was like, do you want an opportunity for work? It's just amazing how little people ask. And so,
I don't know why. Like, I'll go to universities too. I'll talk to like the SPE groups and all that stuff. The common response is this: like, hey, how come you worked at CRA over the summer as an intern? Did you get to know Cole? Why not? Well, I don't want to bother them, or I don't want to bug them. I don't want to. It's like you're asking them about their career, you're asking about the company. Like, it's not really bugging. Like, conversations with people is not really bothering people.
And I actually think higher up in organizations, people are more approachable. So it's the
title that's scary.
I think it's the title that scares people. Find a way also to do it in personal environments. Like, hey, can I buy you a coffee, or like, whether you see them in the community or whatever. I can't remember the last time, even I didn't do it much when I was younger, but nobody said no.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had anybody say no to me. And even as even in the workplace, I'm 41, I'm still young. There's a lot of people who, that we work with that are in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. The age gap of me asking some 70-year-old CEO to go grab coffee or lunch is bigger than a post-college kid asking me. And they do it for me all the time. And they did it before I had the title. So I think most people, like you said, they're worried that they're going to bother somebody, but I think they'll find that, deep down, everybody's a person, everybody's real. And there may be the occasional rejection. If the conversation is the goal of like selling them something, or like achieving something, don't do it.
Yeah.
If the goal is just to like learn from them, their experiences, tap into their advice, I bet 9 out of 10 people would gladly take.
Dude, that's what I'll tell the students. I'm like, if you're going to meet with, let's say you're reaching out to Cole, if you're going to meet with Cole, obviously you need a job, but obviously, whether it's a salesperson, whether it's a student, like obviously you need the job and all that stuff, but don't make it about the job. You know what I mean? Make it about learning from them. Like, ask them about their career. What were some lessons learned? What would they tell themselves younger? What advice would you give to a student that's about to graduate? All these different questions. And at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, Cole, if a student is reaching out to you, chances are they might be curious about a job there, right? But don't make that transaction be that conversation. There's a lot of other things you can dive into that you actually learn a lot more.
Totally agree. Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, anything else? Anything on your mind you want to kind of like that's been kind of keeping you up at night? You've been kind of challenged with, or anything you want to share with the audience here?
No, I don't think so. I like what you're doing. I love that there's people out there like yourselves promoting conversations like these. I think it's important, and I've enjoyed being part of this. And you asked some wonderful questions, and so keep doing what you're doing. I don't have anything on the heart.
One last question: how intentional? Again, this is the rapid question because I'm just kind of curious about this because as we grow in our careers and as we go through life, the circles around, the people around changes, right? Or they should change, like obviously you're gonna have some people going on throughout life with you and all that stuff, but they do change. How active are you seeking out aspirational circles or circles of people that you can kind of like be vulnerable and share your leadership journey and get ideas from? Like, how active are you in that, I guess, area of your networking?
Yeah, very. I mean, it was kind of slow. I didn't do it a lot at first, but I'm very intentional about where I'm spending my time and who I'm spending my time with, and that doesn't necessarily mean a big title. I mean, it may mean somebody who just has just like an incredible amount of depth to them and just a rock solid human, and so. I think you ultimately have to decide like what's important in your own life and how does your time and your schedule mirror that. Does it mirror that? Like a lot people get off track when their schedule doesn't match the areas where they want to be spending time. So I would say over like the last 2 years, I mean, I've hyperdrive saying, okay, I got to spend less time over here and I need to spend more time over here. And by the way, that person over here that's in this group, golly, every time I hear him, he says something that like hits me deep. I got to make sure I got to go seek that person out one-on-one or send him a text just saying like, hey, that comment you said today, it really stuck with me. Thank you for that, so there is a big degree of intentionality there. And so something that I feel like I'm getting better at and hopefully will continue to get better at, but you got to constantly look at it because stuff creeps in.
It does.
So it's a constant.
And it's also one of those things too. It's like people like being negative, right? Like majority of people like being negative. They like complaining about the situation, like kind of like, holding you back and all this stuff. So whenever you are in conversations, let's say it's your original support group, or let's say it's your original friends or people you start off with and all that stuff, whatever it is, or maybe it's a group you just get introduced to. I love that. It's like, if they're providing you with depth, if they're providing you with insight, even inspiration, or it's like, man, this person, they have a lot of stuff, a lot of headwinds they're facing, but they're actually kind of getting through that. That is the people I think that we need to start aligning versus the ones that just kind of like complaining. Just like being negative, complaining, kind of bringing your attitude down. Because that does affect how we approach challenges in our lives, personal and professional.
100%. Completely agree with all you said there.
So I get the last word. That's what's going on.
Okay. Hey, right, thank you. This is awesome.
Hey, so anyway, if anyone wants to connect with Cole, check out Cole Patchell, connect with him on LinkedIn, shoot him a note even if you just kind of want to ask him, talk about culture, talk about anything he said on this podcast, whether it's taking hills, or whether it's having to bring more spiritual, faith base in your culture, or whether it's just kind of like, hey, what's this journey visiting 50 countries and did you notice more similarities or differences? Like, hey, these are some great leadoff questions if you want to connect with Cole. And again, Cole, I'm excited to hear about this opening in Brenham, Texas.
Let's get you there.
Dude, I'm not afraid for that. I love that part of Texas, man. I love little road trips too. Hey, I'm in Fulcher, man. So that's that's like 10 minutes away. There. That's 10 minutes away from me pretty much. So, man, hey, let's link up after this. I'd love to get a cup of coffee and just kind of connect with you a little bit more. But thank you all for tuning in. Cole, thank you for your time, buddy. And again, I appreciate the conversation on your journey and your thoughts and all that fun stuff. All right, everyone. Till next time.